Day 1. Today was the first time I've ever opened my eyes. The room was white. Its light was blinding. Long, filthy tubes poked out from my coarse fur. Brown and reddish colors sloshed around, pumping in and out of my chest. Bringing my hand upwards, I managed to rip the muzzle from my parched lips. "Help," I cried meekly. "I need a drink. I'm so thirsty." I lie on the surgical table for some time longer. The wait for aid allowed my shallow eyes to grow a sort of resistance. The floodlights didn't blind me as much, and thus I started to calm down. The entire room that I had assumed was a hospital was in fact the opposite. Dirtied tiled walls with unidentifiable liquid stained to their surface. Used meat hooks and rusted chains hung across the ceiling like Christmas decorations. The air was sweet, yet tasted of copper. Finally, a man came rushing in the room, slamming the wooden door wide. He was a bigger man that wore jeans and a dirty lab coat. His middle-aged face seemed worn as he stopped in his tracks, looking at me. With a smile and a wave of my paw, the man turned to leave the room. I fell back to the table after failing to sit up. My head was dizzy, and I felt nauseous. I kept gagging, but nothing came up. The man returned, carrying the larger half of a wolf's skull. His hand seemed small compared to my body, but I allowed it to keep me down. I could feel every inch of his calluses apply pressure into my chest. This act made several ribs pop into place. With his other hand, he placed the wolf skull onto my head, shifting it until it finally clicked into place. Afterwards, he grabbed a hold of a drill on the ground and held it to my skull. What's happening, mister?" I groaned. The man's face looked disgusted with me. With some sort of vengeance, he started drilling screws deep into my cranium, fusing the bone with the rest of my body and throwing my blood onto the ground. I howled in intense pain as the man ensued with his surgery. Day 4. "Mr. Edwin?" I called up the stairs for my master, but he did not respond. I resided down here in the darkness. Chains clattered as I waited, standing near the foot of the staircase. I was shackled on both ankles, both far too tight and causing my skin to bruise. My master didn't want to lose me. He was kind to me and fed me several delicacies when he saw me, but now I was worried. He did not come and see me yesterday, and I began wondering if he had hurt himself. If something had happened to my master, then who would save him? How could I escape the den he made for me to rescue him? As the door's locks began to rattle, I quickly scurried over to the farthest corner and curled into a ball, an aged blanket much too small being my only source of comfort. Mr. Edwin opened the heavy door and began descending the staircase. With him, he dragged a leaking straw bag. At the final stair, he stopped and scanned the darkness for me. Desperately wanting to pull a prank on him, I got on all fours and slowly inched forward. Once his eyes found me, I leapt forward and hissed at him. Mr. Edwin was not happy with this, despite knowing my chains would keep me from him. "Mr. Edwin, you've returned! Did I scare you with my prank?" I asked, while getting back on my feet and backing away, giving my master space. "No. Here, eat," Mr. Edwin commanded by throwing the sack behind my head. The bag landed with a soft splat, and my master turned to head back to his home. "Mr. Edwin?" I tried to ask my master a question, but he continued, locking the door behind him. I wanted to ask him when I would be able to leave my den. These bruises around my ankles were starting to fill me with such pain. In fact, every joint in my body was beginning to feel the tension. For such a big basement, I felt cramped. Despite my complaints, I never once did feel anger towards my master. He was the one keeping me alive, after all. Tired from moving all day, I slumped back into my corner and grabbed the sack. Turning it upside down and dumping its fleshy contents to the ground, I was able to salvage the container and add it to my growing collection. I had no real plans with the sacks I collected, but their scent was my only escape from this pit. The items that I had discarded to the floor were filled with nutrients I needed to survive. I was always thirsty, never hungry, and these fleshy bits quenched that thirst. Day 6. Mr. Edwin's child played with the locks today. I assumed my master had been trying to prevent such a thing from occurring. No doubt I was a frightening being to look at, but that did not mean I was to stay quiet, just hidden. My master had a family that lived above my den. Time and time again I could hear him and his wife fill the air with laughter. Sometimes I would try to mimic this laughter. I did enjoy the sound of it after all. My master did not show any signs of happiness around me, and I thought it was the same for most humans that came in contact with him. I was shocked to hear that he was a good man to his wife and daughter. His joy, not to me, but his family, subsequently filled me with the same emotions. The child managed to lift several locks, but not all. The door cracked open, but was unable to open fully. From the top of the staircase, Mr. Edwin's daughter looked through. My bones ached a great deal, but I made an effort to make a good first impression. "Are you my master's daughter?" I called. The daughter looked nervous and remained silent. "It's all right, little one. My name is Chimera. Your father is a good friend of mine." "Really?" the child asked hesitantly. Yes. We are the greatest of friends. He feeds me and cares for me. Your father, my master, does he have any happiness for me?" I asked the child, unaware that my existence was a complete secret. "I haven't heard him talk about you, Mr. Chimera. Why are you in the dark?" Well, that's because your father doesn't want to look at me. I'm quite scary looking, but I'm very, very friendly," I said, reassuring the little girl that I meant no harm. There was a long silence before I heard the girl's mother's footsteps travel to the basement door. She scolded the child for trying to dig into her father's work. If my master had never talked about me, then how could I believe his wife knew of me? Did she know I was nice? That I wanted to meet them all and become part of their family? Even if I was not allowed to, I would still have liked to be great friends with them all on the surface. Day 7. Mr. Edwin's daughter came to talk to me again. As much as I admired my master, his daughter quickly became my favorite other human. Our conversation was bland, but nice. She described the outside world to me, and I told her what I looked like. She attempted to make drawings and sent them through the door's crack to me. With the limited light, I would applaud her artistic abilities. "Wow, Cassidy, these drawings are amazing. Although I don't have crab claws, you know." I tried my very best to encourage the little girl. If she wanted to, Cassidy could become the next best painter or sculptor of her generation. She was so young, yet so creative. "You said you had, what's the word, pinchers?" I guess I did say that. I have 3 fingers on each hand. They're really long, so I can pick up a lot at once, I exclaimed back, and waited for my next portrait. By the time our conversation reached 5 minutes, I began to feel extremely tired. It hurts being by the stairs and away from my blanket. I didn't want to be rude and was having a good time, but I needed to rest. I was thirsty the more I talked and stood at the bottom of the staircase. Another paper fell down and I caught it. "How's this one?" she asked. This one is perfect, Cassidy. I wish there was something I could give you for this," I replied. Although it was a child's drawing, she still did a fantastic job. So thirsty." "What was that, Mr. Chimera? You said you're thirsty? I'll go get you a drink. Let me hang up this drawing of you first," Cassidy yelled and ran to the kitchen. Why did I not think of this before? Now that I had a relationship with another human, they too could aid my survival. Cassidy was such a sweetheart and fetched me something to drink. She was giving me confidence that someday soon I would be able to leave this den for the outside world. When Cassidy returned, she squeezed the glass through the door and placed it on the floor above me. "Cassidy, thank you very, very much for the drink, but I cannot reach up that high. Is there any way you could throw it down here to me? I asked, trying my very best not to be rude. I can't throw it. The glass will break, Cassidy admitted. She must have felt terrible, but any minute longer without the liquid would surely kill me. I'm very sorry, Cassidy, but is there any way you can come and hand it to me then? I can wait in the back of the room if you wish, so I don't frighten you. Please, Cassidy, I need you to help me. The little girl was very reluctant to do so, but eventually she ran from the door to get a flashlight. After a bit of a struggle, she managed to fit through the crack and grab the glass. I wanted to snatch it from her the moment she made it to the bottom, but I decided it was best to keep my promise. Mr. Chimera, I'm coming down now. Please be at the wall, she said, frightened by the darkness. Of course, Cassidy. You are very brave for doing this. I can't tell you how happy you have made me, I said, climbing onto my blanket and watching her. Cassidy stepped onto the cold concrete and gently placed the cup on the ground. A liquid I had never seen before filled its inside. I waited for a few more seconds just so Cassidy could leave. I did not want to scare my friend away, but she was making it extremely hard to stay patient. I wanted to drink. I was so thirsty. Cassidy, please go back up the stairs so that I may drink. Please return home. I begged the girl, but she stood on the ground floor. Mr. Chimera, I can't leave this cup down here, the child said softly, while trying to find where my voice was coming from. I had practiced pranks before for Mr. Edwin, thus I knew how to mimic echoing. I needed the child to leave. Now. You will be frightened if you do not leave, Cassidy. Go home now. My voice boomed. I felt terrible for raising my voice, but I knew my appearance would only make things worse. The silly, brave, and bright girl that was Cassidy stayed. Unable to hold myself back any longer, I bounced my voice from the opposite wall and began my approach. The little girl was now just a foot away from me. Very quickly I snatched the glass and retreated back to my darkness, my chains giving away my bed as I quickly dumped the liquid into my mouth. Cassidy's light followed my chains to my shackles. The clear liquid she had given to me was gagged upwards as I vomited it back onto the ground. This was not what I had wanted. This liquid was disgusting, and I hacked up a storm of coughing. My thirst only intensifying as Cassidy witnessed the dark blood that soaked the ground beneath my bed, my permanently stained talons, and mud-coated fur. No doubt she came across my bone-jutting face and soiled herself. I was stuck in a trance of distress. My bones and tendons were aching far too much to wait for my master. That is why, as Cassidy stood frozen in terror, I got on all fours and pounced onto her, ripping her limbs off one at a time and drinking their veins dry. Day 15. I cried for a long time. I did not move from my bed for any reason. Not that it mattered. My master, Mr. Edwin, never came to see me. I was the thirstiest I'd ever been, and because of that I hated myself. I wanted desperately to devour my skull and cease to live. My life was a gift from Mr. Edwin, and with that gift I took something from him. The gift from God that was sent to him now rested easy in my stomach. My long fingers gripped hard onto the pictures Cassidy had drawn for me. I missed our talks, even if they were uncomfortably long. How could I blame anything on anyone other than myself? She didn't know better. She was my friend. Now her body rested in one of the sacks I had collected. I only drank her blood and killed her. I did not, and would never consume her flesh. Now that 8 days had passed, I knew it was only a matter of time before I died. Time to time again, I would look up the stairs and murmur to myself, Mr. Edwin, please let me free. My master never returned. No matter how much I prayed or begged, he was gone, mourning the loss of his daughter with his wife. A sick thought jolted through my mind time and time again. Cassidy didn't have to be gone. If I trained myself hard enough, there was a chance I could mimic her voice. Maybe then I would see my master. Maybe then he would feed me and praise my prank because it reminded him of what he had lost. Daddy? Mom? Mommy? I mimicked and waited. Every couple of minutes or so, I would repeat myself in hopes that one of them would walk through that door. Day 16. Today the locks rustled. As soon as I heard this, I began calling for Cassidy's mother and father. I wanted them to come to me, to feed my thirst, to throw me another sack and give me some sort of interaction. When the last latch came unlocked, Cassidy's mother ran down the stairs into the pitch black. "Cassidy! Baby, where are you?" she screamed. Quietly, I rose from my spot and watched her. "I'm over here, Mommy. Mommy, come here. Bring me something to drink. I'm so thirsty." I didn't want to kill Mr. Edwin's wife, but I needed blood. I needed the red juice to ease my pain, and if she would not comply, then she would serve me just as well. "A drink? Cassidy, where are you? Come to me, baby, and I'll help you. Please, baby, please." She took too long. I knew it was bad of me. I knew I shouldn't have even tried this game, though I didn't regret my decision as I pounced on her. As Mr. Edwin's wife screeched, I hacked her throat open, placing my lips onto the esophagus and lapping any liquid inside. Her screams quickly became gargles, and she stopped fighting me after a few moments of pointless struggling. After I was done feasting, I looked up to see Mr. Edwin at the top of the staircase. I hissed and cursed at the man who had forgotten me. My master had left me alone, and I had committed sins because of that. This pain in my heart shouldn't have had to bear down on me, and yet it was because of Mr. Edwin I suffered. Mr. Edwin did not say anything, and shut the door, leaving me alone and in the dark, with his wife's corpse. Day 17. Mr. Edwin opened the door and walked down the stairs. At the final step he stopped, his foot just barely hovering above the ground. I wanted so desperately to rip my master in half, to decorate my ceiling with his intestines and shattered ribs, to dance in this man's flesh and blood. Oh, I thought I would have gotten my chance today, but instead, Mr. Edwin placed his foot back on the stairs. I bolted to him and nearly grabbed a hold of him before my chain stopped me. I hissed and growled, barked, and screamed the same screams his wife and child screamed to me. Foam fell from my black lips, skin ripped at my anklets, and my nails broke on the concrete as I clawed my way to him. Mr. Edwin simply chuckled and cried. I stopped acting like a ravaging beast, and in a voice I never knew I could make, I spoke. "Dad? Why are you crying?" Mr. Edwin simply shook his head slowly and fetched a key from his pocket. Gently, he held it out to me. I thought of yanking him into the darkness and disemboweling him, but I couldn't help but feel sorry for this man. Carefully, I took the key with one hand. Mr. Edwin looked at me, and for the first and last time, he flashed a smile of happiness to me. Afterwards, he turned and walked up the stairs, leaving the basement door open. I returned to my blanket to think over what had just happened. The key unlocked the chains from my ankles. I was free? A loud bang from upstairs interrupted my thoughts, and I grabbed my blanket. Hesitantly, I approached the stairs and walked up them. Now in the house and free from my den, I traveled the empty halls. I felt so large here, more cramped than ever before. Eventually, I found myself in the kitchen. Bright, outside light filled the home. On the fridge were pictures by Cassidy, one of which made my heart sink. On it was her mother, Mr. Edwin, and me, the Chimera. As I explored more of the home, I grew to realize I knew this place. It felt so familiar to me. I wanted to find my master, but stopped at his door when I found a family picture hanging on the outside wall. 4 smiling faces greeted me. Cassidy, Cassidy's mother, Mr. Edwin, and someone else. A boy, just a little older than Cassidy, smiled. He looked oddly familiar, and the feeling gave me the tingles. Ignoring him, I opened the bedroom door to see my master, lying on his bed, his head leaking the red water from a fresh wound. I closed the door and refused to drink from him. Opening the front door, I thanked my master for setting me free. Despite my complaints, I never once felt anger towards my master. Not again, that is. After all, he was the one keeping me alive.